पुलिस डर नहीं रहे कांग्रेस के बाहर, मुझे ममा रहे, उनको अंदर लाओ, और जो हमारे यहाँ डर रहे हो तो बाहर निकालो, चलो भैया जाओ, आरएसएस की ओर जाओ, भागो, मजे लो।
You're watching News Epicentre with me, Marya Shakil. There seems to be no end to the Congress exodus. These are the faces of the Congress that have jumped the ship over the years. A galaxy of leaders, from veterans to young guns, who have served and now ditched the Gandhis as the Congress ship continues to implode. The newest entrant to this club of former Congress leaders is Ghulam Nabi Azad, a party veteran who has served the Congress for over 40 years, has now delivered a massive blow, which will be clearly a body blow to the Gandhis, resigning from all party posts. Ghulam Nabi Azad wrote a scathing letter to Sonia Gandhi, raining fire on former Congress President Rahul Gandhi, essentially blaming him for the party's demise. This is the letter. He said, and I quote him, "After Rahul Gandhi's entry into the party, our consultative mechanism was demolished. All senior and experienced leaders were sidelined, and a new coterie of inexperienced sycophants ran the party." As the Congress is all set to pick its next party president, Azad has called Rahul Gandhi childish, immature, and non-serious. He also said that the Congress is now at the point of no return and accused the High Command of fraud in the name of sham internal elections. This has already created a storm in the Congress unit in Jammu and Kashmir, with 5 top leaders resigning in solidarity with Ghulam Nabi Azad. This also comes as preparations are underway for assembly elections in Jammu and Kashmir that are likely to take place next year. All indications suggest that Ghulam Nabi Azad will float his own party and contest the state elections next year. In fact, National Conference patron Farooq Abdullah has also extended an invitation to Azad to join his party ahead of the elections. Azad's resignation marks the most high-profile exit of one of the G23 leaders who had written to Sonia Gandhi 2 years ago for a collective and inclusive leadership, exposing the fault lines in the grand old party. However, the Gandhi camp has hit back at Ghulam Nabi Azad. Congress MP Jairam Ramesh did not mince his words, where he said, and I quote him, "A man who has been treated by the greatest respect by the Congress leadership has betrayed it by his vicious personal attacks, which reveals his true character. Azad's DNA has been modified," unquote. Amidst electoral setbacks and internal power struggles, such exits continue to jolt the Congress party, making it look like a house of cards versus the cohesive unit of Modi-led BJP and even other opposition parties like the Trinamool Congress and even the Aam Aadmi Party, which are eating away the Congress base. 4 big questions emerge from this latest jolt to the Gandhis. First, has Ghulam Nabi Azad shown a mirror to the Congress, or has he betrayed the Congress, a party he served for 40 years? With exits from Team Sonia Gandhi, because he was part of Team Sonia, and Rahul Gandhi, with so many likes of Jyotiraditya Scindia and others, is the Congress now at a point of no return? Can other opposition parties wait for the Congress churning to end? With opposition in complete disarray, is 2024 sealed for the BJP? We have a power-packed lineup of former and serving Congress leaders on the show today to decode Azad's exit and the state of the Congress party. These are the big newsmakers who will be joining me shortly. But first, here's how the drama unfolded today.
It's perhaps the final nail in Congress's coffin. Ghulam Nabi Azad, the man who worked with Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi, has resigned from all posts in the party. in a 5-page resignation letter to interim President Sonia Gandhi. Ghulam Nabi Azad all but attributed Rahul Gandhi as the reason for his exit, calling him childish, immature, non-serious. Azad said that Rahul Gandhi destroyed the party's consultative mechanism. He sidelined all senior and experienced leaders in the party and replaced them with a new coterie of inexperienced sycophants. Azad claimed that all important decisions are being taken by Rahul Gandhi or his guards or his PAs, while proxies are being propped up to take over the party's leadership. He also pointed out specific instances of Rahul Gandhi's erratic behavior, like how the tearing up of a UPA ordinance in 2013 was childish and immature, or that he resigned in a huff after Congress badly lost the 2019 Lok Sabha elections. And Azad attributed Congress conceding political space to the BJP because the party had foisted a non-serious person at the helm for the last 8 years.
I think Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad Saab's letter is the complete and correct diagnosis of the problems ailing the International Congress as an organization and as a political party.
I only hope that the powers that be within the party will correct the aberrations and restore the Congress party to what is expected of it.
But minutes after Azad's open criticism, the so-called coterie hit back.
प्रदेश कांग्रेस का अध्यक्ष, चीफ मिनिस्टर जम्मू कश्मीर का सब कुछ मिला हो, उनसे कोई देश में उम्मीद नहीं करता था कि आजाद साहब इस प्रकार का पत्र लिख देंगे।
ये सब बहानेबाजी बंद करिए गुलाम नबी जी। सीधी सी एक बात है कि उन लोगों के साथ आपके संबंध जुट गए हैं जिन्होंने कश्मीर की धारा 370 समाप्त की।
Azad was a leading member of the G23, or the group of 23 dissenters who wrote to Sonia Gandhi in 2020, calling for a complete overhaul of the organization and a full-time leadership. He said that after the letter, the group was attacked, vilified and humiliated. Months before Azad's resignation, another prominent face of the G23, Kapil Sibal, had quit. And now all eyes are on whether another member, Anand Sharma, will follow suit.
इसीलिए हमने सामूहिक सोच और सामूहिक निर्णय की हमेशा बात रखी। उसको तोड़ दिया गया, उसका सम्मान नहीं हुआ।
Azad is only the latest in a long line of high-profile exits from the Congress party, all citing inaccessibility and indecision of the top leadership. The resignations aside, the party has lost 2 Lok Sabha elections quite badly and won only 9 out of 50 assembly elections ever since 2014. Currently, it's only in power in 2 states. So is the Congress at a point of no return?
Let me take that question to the panelists who are joining me. Salman Khurshid, Congress leader. Priyanka Chaturvedi, Shiv Sena MP and former Congress leader. Prithviraj Chavan is member of G23. Really appreciate your time. Mr. Khurshid, I'm going to begin with you. We have seen many exit letters, but this one certainly seems to be most damaging to the Congress party, given that it is coming from an ultimate insider that Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad was, with whom you have worked for good 40 years. Your first thought on this letter?
Gosh, I think the if it's something that had to happen and has happened, it's just best to get on and not dwell upon this letter. When somebody takes a decision that makes them leave a path that they have treaded for 40 years or 50 years, then you need to spruce up your reasons to sound convincing, and perhaps that's what has happened. He may have justification for saying something or not saying it, but I don't think that we should now dwell too long on it, and I don't think that there is much that we can do about it, and therefore I think it's just best to just simply say goodbye. Okay,
you're saying goodbye to him. Prithviraj Chavan, he was a member of G23, and as a member of G23, did this resignation of Mr. Azad come as a surprise to you?
Well, I'm personally pained. It's very unfortunate. We had got together a couple of years back. We've introspected about the affairs of the Congress party. the repeated defeats in both Lok Sabha elections, and almost after Lok Sabha election, almost 40 assembly elections we won. Whatever elections we got elected in, we lost 40 elections, but some elections we won, and there also we could not form the government like in Goa. So we're all concerned about happening in the Congress party. It was a consensus in that group, which you people, the media called G23. It was just 23 of us, senior members, former union ministers, former working committee members, former chief ministers. We wrote a letter because we could not get a personal appointment for over a month. She was not well, there was COVID, and we could understand that. And so we thought at least the leadership should know what we feel. We're all senior members. And so we wrote a letter, which was supposed to be a confidential letter, but unfortunately, somebody leaked it. And then we branded as rebels and asking questions and all that thing. All we had asked was three simple things. The Congress party should be led by somebody full-time. That secondly, there should be introspection why we lost, and that there should be elections to all organs of the Congress party as per the Congress constitution. A couple of months, 4 or 5 months later, Mrs. Gandhi did give us an audience. We had a 5-hour-long meeting. And by and large, agreed with all of whatever we had said. That yes, there'll be elections of the Congress party. Yes, there'll be Chintan Shibir, and there'll be more frequent meetings, which didn't happen. But both the promises she fulfilled. There was a Chintan Shibir, there was a Shibir, and the elections are on. Unfortunately, the Shibir got turned from a Chintan Shibir to a Nava Sankalpa Shibir. That means don't introspect, don't ask questions, let's look at the future. So be it. Udaipur, all of us met after 2 years, national leadership met, and there was some hope that things will happen. And elections are on. So I can't fault the Congress party leadership for that. Elections are on. But whether elections will be taken to the logical conclusion, which means whether all the organs, the parliamentary board, the parliamentary board, the working committee, and election committee, will there be elections for all these bodies? These elections have not been held for 24 years.
That's right.
So if you're going to accuse Mr. Modi of being dictatorial, that he's ushered in a police state, there is undeclared emergency, then do you have a right to accuse him of dictatorship? Our own party is not functioning democratically. This is all we have. Unfortunately, there is a coterie, there's a group which kept on blaming us.
Okay, since you speak about the coterie, I'm going to ask you this question. Ghulam Nabi Azad has left. Kapil Sibal exited the Congress a month ago. Anand Sharma could be on his way out too. What remains of this group of G23?
Well, we'll continue to fight to the last man. There are 20 of us still there. I mean, many of them pleaded with us to leave the party. That was not acceptable. After all, nobody else can take on Mr. Modi. And it's a historical responsibility of the Congress party to provide a viable, a credible alternative to Mr. Modi, because a regional party cannot do that. But maybe Congress party alone cannot defeat Mr. Modi today. But if Congress party was to lead a broad alliance of all the opposition parties, leave our petty differences along, egos along, and fight the election, maybe you don't have to declare a prime ministerial candidate. Mr. Jayaprakash Narayan did not declare a prime ministerial candidate. Still he defeated Mrs. Gandhi. Maybe it is a Jayaprakash Narayan kind of movement has arrived. And responsibility for leading that alliance is Congress party, because no regional party can do it. All we are asking within the party is for those reforms. And those reforms will continue to ask for.
Okay. Mr. Chaturvedi, come in on this. Ghulam Nabi Azad says that Rahul Gandhi demolished the entire consultative mechanism. He has called him immature and childish as well. You have worked with Rahul Gandhi, but when you quit the Congress, there was no personal attack against Rahul Gandhi. You have been rather graceful in your exit. How are you looking at this letter of Ghulam Nabi Azad?
I think your question itself nails it, graceful and graceless. As far as this particular letter is concerned, everybody knew this was coming. Sooner or later, it was to happen. And since the first letter was written to Mrs. Gandhi, and then we saw the to and fro that was happening. But however, in hindsight, to blame one particular party president for functioning in a particular manner, which may or may not have had you in the same position that you've enjoyed over many years, does not mean that you can call him immature, childish. must understand for past 40 years, over 4 decades of being in governments, being minister, being the chief minister, in the top 5 organizational positions of a political party, I would want you to today, Marya ji, tell me one particular person that comes to your mind across political parties in India who've enjoyed seniority as well as senior ranks, not just the organization, but also in governments when Congress was in power, and you'd be able to name none. That speaks of the respect that he commanded over the years in the Congress party. It is a known fact that the Congress is seeing a massive churning. Many may disagree with new style of functioning, many may agree with the new style of functioning. But the point here is that everybody has got a chance to work. It is, when I used to be in the Congress party, at times I used to wonder that with these senior leaders not choosing to retire, I'm sorry to say this, and holding on to those top 5 positions all the time, would we youngsters ever be able to get a chance to prove ourselves in any position possible? So, yes, it is saddening to see the tone and tenor of the letter and accusing somebody in hindsight.
Mr. Khurshid, has Ghulam Nabi Azad shown mirror to the Congress, or has he betrayed the party? Because the jury is divided. Many think that the tone and tenor of the letter is almost similar to what other leaders have said in the past. And those who are presently in the Congress, they are saying that this is betrayal.
I just wonder. This is like people living a full life. And then somebody you've known all your life happens to pass away. Upon the demise, you don't think of being the next, and you don't think of how things will be when you pass away, etc. But that's how life is. That people line up, you reach a top, and then you slide down, or just generally fade away. These things happen, and when these are all exaggerated and escalated by events which are adverse events that are going against the interests and the success of your organization and your party, then all these things get amplified. And I think we just have to take them in our stride. It's deeply disappointing. It's deeply disappointing if somebody that you worked with for such a long time takes such a decision. I would be in a better position to talk about it if any one of them who've left had actually discussed it with me or with some of us. But this wasn't discussed. It became like a monopoly, an exclusive club where the people who felt let down, about whom many people would have felt let down in the past, decided to just walk away. I don't think that was necessary, but I think it became inevitable because of circumstances. Now, to dwell upon that and to rip things apart and say things which are unpleasant, etc., may just not be the occasion. I don't think it helps anybody for us to do that. It's deeply disappointing, obviously deeply disappointing, and to an extent, for me to say it doesn't matter would be wrong. It matters, but we have to go on. We have to move on and put our act together and then work for the tomorrow and the day after and the day after that.
So you're essentially saying that the show must go on. But you're looking at, someone who has worked with 3 generations of Gandhis. Ghulam Nabi Azad was essentially part of the Congress system. Many say that he was the architect of the current Congress system, which he has exited. The system which he has called as a system of sycophants or of coterie. It is similar to what has been echoed by many who have quit Congress, and many of whom who have worked very closely with Rahul Gandhi.
What would I say to that? I would say that people don't really have a very, very remarkable imagination. They all seem to find the same words and the same phrases and the same reasons to give for the decision they are taking. But be that as it may, of course, he has worked 3 generations in the Congress party, but many things that he would have done, and like most of us do, many things that he would have done would have not been very comfortable for others in the party or for different generation of people. But you just have to live with it. I mean, you have to, you can't just become a baby and say, no one is listening to me, nobody is doing anything for me. You have to work your way through. Get successes and you get failures, and you have to live with all of them. And then if you've done it all your life, and a new generation takes over, and the new generation has its own systems, you just have to accept it. You can't just simply freeze everything as it was 30 years ago and expect that things will continue in the same manner. So I'm not quite sure that I can make much of what has been said in terms of the complaints that are made. And I frankly think it's not worth our while to dwell too much on it.
Okay, let me bring in Prithviraj Chavan. Mr. Chavan, you said that you're pained at Mr. Azad's exit. Are you pained with the exit, or are you pained at the scathing tone of this letter? I mean, we have seen so many exit letters, but this one certainly really hurts the Congress because of the manner in which he has cited instances, and many say this is fact.
No. Let's not broaden the scope of the debate. I think we have asked for reforms within the Congress party, 23 of us. 3 of them are left. We have 20 of us are left. We still continue to ask for reforms. What reforms are we asking for? All we are saying that let the Congress party be run as per the 135-year-old Congress constitution. Now, what's wrong with that? Now, Mr. Ghulam Nabi has made some serious scathing allegations and make some accusations. Unfortunately, those are his personal views and all that. But again, the criticism from the Congress party against Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad is also very unfortunate. That we gave you so much, the Congress party gave you so much. This is a Darbari attitude. After all, it's a democratic party. Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad got elected to the Congress Working Committee whenever elections were held. Now, after Calcutta 1997, no elections have been held for the last 24 years. And therefore, you say, can we made him a member of the cabinet? Well, cabinet is formed of the most competent people that party has at that given point. If you happen to be a competent member and was made a minister, now do you see, like the Mughal dynasty, that I gave you this thing, that I give you so much and all that thing? This whole attitude is a Darbari attitude. And that's why we feel, leave apart the allegations in the letter, let us have democratic elections. If Rahul Gandhi sincerely wants to lead the opposition and oppose Mr. Modi, then let him contest the election, let him be democratically elected president, that he will have the legitimate authority to forge an alliance with the opposition party. But what Mr. Modi wants Congress to fight every single seat so that the opposition votes get divided and Modi rules forever.
Okay. Priyanka Chaturvedi, the fact is also that Rahul Gandhi has been a reluctant leader. Someone who is constantly pushed by his party to take a particular role, but he seems to be declining it. Several opposition leaders, including Mamata Banerjee, have been vocal in their views that Congress lacks that fire in the belly to take on the Modi-Shah juggernaut and to also be a responsible opposition. What are your thoughts?
I'd just like to say one thing here. Everybody might have an opinion. So do I. I may also have an opinion. But it is for the Congress party members and Congress party office bearers to choose who they want as their party president. And if it is overwhelmingly Shri Rahul Gandhi, then I think across political parties it needs to be respected. I just like to say one thing here. You can have many issues with the style of functioning, reluctant leadership, etc. But that is how Congress workers want it to be. Why are we running away from the fact that internally most of the political party members of the Congress party believe in his leadership? Whether he's being able to connect with the larger audience in the nation is something we can all question and challenge. But Congress party members overwhelmingly believe that, barring the 23 who felt in a certain way, overwhelmingly, and I think that Sandeep Dikshitji has gone and said this was a banner for reform, not for rebellion. So now that or revolt, I think his word is revolt.
Yes.
So I think it is for the larger narrative to come into picture, and having worked, Mr. Azad having worked in various positions, to grudge any new leadership emerging and to grudge any youngsters taking over or not being part of decision making. I think that has to happen as a smooth transition process.
Ma'am, what about this charge that the Congress party has reached a point of no return? This is what Ghulam Nabi Azad has said in his letter. And if the principal opposition party has reached a point of no return, this isn't really good news for the entire opposition.
I totally agree with you that there needs to be a strong opposition to Bharatiya Janata Party, which has become overwhelmingly a centralized force, which is using all central agencies to hit out an opposition, try to weaken its own alliance partners, to use various agencies to silence opposition. And the last thing that the opposition needs is this kind of rebellion within the ranks in any of the opposition political parties. That's point one. Now, the point two that you speak about with regards to coterie. Are we trying to say that Ghulam Nabi Azad ji, for over 40 years, he's been in the party, he did not himself have a coterie? Are we saying that most of the general secretaries who've been serving in the Congress for many, many years now did not have their own coteries? For Priyanka Chaturvedi, I'm just giving you one example. For one Priyanka Chaturvedi to rise through the ranks, I must say it came because she smashed those coteries, but failed those coteries as well. So, I mean, every political party, it is not the Congress party alone. It is the Bharatiya Janata Party, everybody. When they reach these levels of seniority, they have their own coteries, and for them to accuse each other, I'm not making a case for anybody. All I'm trying to say is that at this point in time, the opposition weakens every time we see this kind of rebellion, especially when it's coming close to 2024, where we go for an all-important election, and we have to go as one unit who are standing up against the growing authoritarianism coming from the Bharatiya Janata Party. And that is for the Congress Party also to introspect.
And Salman Khurshid, would you also say that the time has come for old to make way for the new in the Congress? And that is the reason why, because there is this ongoing tussle in multiple states. One of the reasons being cited is this, that the old guard doesn't give way to or responsibility to the young Turks. Many members of the G23, I'm not too sure what is left of G23 now, have left, but there is also an indication that there has to be some kind of an arrangement between the old and the new. That the old must give way.
And why is the new generation going? A lot of people in the new generation have gone.
Fine enough.
I mean, I can understand that the old feel that they're not wanted anymore, but I think that's not true about the party. The party has emphatically and repeatedly said that you've got to have a decent mix of the old and the new, of the old and the young. That's what the party has repeatedly said. And this is not rocket science that you require every organization. But the trouble here is a lot of very, let us say, talented young people have left. Now, they were talented undoubtedly because we saw that they were talented, but that they could sustain their place and their commitment to a party obviously had question marks, because the very fact that they slipped that easily and decided to go elsewhere indicates that their commitment was somehow lacking. Either the ideology issue was lacking, or just their acceptance of the manner in which politics happens in our country, that you can't be at the top all the time. It's not like the past when the Congress leadership was at the top all the time. Now you have the highs and you have the lows. And we are in a particularly bad low. And if people can't take, it's like not being able to take the heat of the kitchen, and you have to leave, then you have to go. But there are many of us who've learned to live with the heat. We've learned to live with the bad times. And we are committed, and we believe that our commitment is not wasted. It's the commitment to the party, because I believe the party is today essential, and its welfare is essential for the country. And what is required in the country is a pluralistic, inclusive society, which only the Congress can ensure. And that's why we are here. So I would suggest the story should be not about those who've left. The story should be about those who are here. I pardon my being so self-centered in this.
That's a very well taken point, Mr. Khurshid. The story should be about those who continue to be in the Congress. So tell me, Mr. Chavan, what next for you if your closest friends have all exited?
No, all people have not existed. Out of 23, we had hundreds of people who wanted to join, but we said no, only former union ministers, former working committee members, and former chief ministers. Now, okay, 3 of them have left. They argued with us. We had long discussions whether they should leave the party or not. We advised him against it. But Mr. Kapil Sibal was firm that nothing is going to happen. This party will continue to be run the way it was run. What accusation Mr. Azad has made in his letter. And finally, I think Mr. Azad also has taken that stand that there is no space for him. I'll just narrate one small incident in a minute.
Yes.
Mr. Anand Sharma, who is also a member of the working committee and a colleague of ours in the letter that we wrote, he was made a chairman of the screening committee in Himachal election. He is a tall leader from Himachal Pradesh, a very senior leader. And Mrs. Gandhi wants to bring all the senior people together. She made Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad chairman of the campaign committee in J&K. But what happens? The screening committee met 5 times and Mr. Anand Sharma was not even invited for the committee meeting of which he was supposed to chair. Now, will Mrs. Gandhi ask who is responsible for this attitude? Why humiliate such a leader like that? You did not have to nominate him to the screening committee, but Mrs. Gandhi invited him to the screening committee and then somebody down below. Now, who is that somebody? Who is part of the coterie, part of these people who are running the party? They humiliated him. He has resigned from the chairmanship of that committee.
All right, Mr. Chavan, Mr. Salman Khurshid and Priyanka Chaturvedi, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Earlier today, I also spoke to Congress MP and Team Rahul member Manikam Tagore on Ghulam Nabi Azad's exit. This is what he had to say. He's joining us live. Manikam Tagore, really appreciate your time. I'm looking at this letter that has been written by Ghulam Nabi Azad, your senior former colleague, and he has been scathing in his criticism, particularly against Rahul Gandhi. He says that Rahul Gandhi is immature and childish. Doesn't it hurt? Although, it almost gives weight to all those leaders who have been talking about Rahul Gandhi and holding him solely responsible for the position the Congress is at present.
Yeah, Marya, thank you for having me in the show. But one thing is that Mr. Rahul Gandhi ji is going to start a historic Padayatra on 7th of September and 2000 from Kanyakumari to Kashmir for around 3,700 kilometers for around 160 days on Bharat Jodo, which is the decision of the Udaipur Declaration, to taking the message to the people of India across India. He is going to walk 3,700 kilometers. When that decision to have the Bharat Jodo Yatra has come, and we are all preparing for that preparations, suddenly this resignation of Azad Sahab comes. It is very unfortunate that Azad Sahab, who should have been part of this Bharat Jodo, the difficult times of the Congress party, he has decided to leave Congress and take his own path. This is personal decisions. But the way he has attacked Congress party and Congress leadership is very, very unfortunate. And that shows that he is walking into a trap by those people who are always against Congress.
But Manikam, why are you saying that this some kind of trap? Because he is talking about instances. He says that how Rahul Gandhi, under his stewardship, the Congress has been losing one election after after the other. It has lost 39 out of 49 assembly elections held between 2014 and 2022. He has talked about a coterie which works around Rahul Gandhi and is responsible for most of the decisions. So the entire consultative process, which was there in the Congress party, is no longer there.
With due respect to Azad Sahab, I'd like to ask how many states he was in charge of that 14 when we were losing. When you count on that, I can count many states on that thing. He was the in-charge general secretary of that thing. How we can run away and put the blame on Mr. Gandhi? Rahul Gandhi ji was only a Congress president for only 2 years. He was elected in 2017 end and he resigned in 2019. It is very unfortunate. Azad Sahab has been a minister in the UPA government, which has lost elections at the performance of the UPA government. And we have to, committee thought over it, and senior leadership has sat together, found the reasons for it. We have tried to correct it. There are decisions has to be taken. But to blame on Rahul Gandhi ji for every decision is completely unacceptable. That is, it shows that there is a pattern which the usually Amit Shah and Modi wanted to insert into the minds of people, that every wrong thing is being committed because of this Rahul Gandhi. That is completely wrong. This Rahul Gandhi is the face of opposition. He fights day and night, and he fought for the price rise. He was the person who was leading from front in the Rashtra.
Many would say, and again a part of the letter that I'm quoting of Azad Saab, he says all seniors and experienced leaders were sidelined. A new coterie of inexperienced sycophants started running the affairs of the party, and that consultative mechanism which was earlier there was demolished by Rahul Gandhi. These are scathing words.
With due respect to Azad Saab, he's senior to us, and I always believe that thing, that this is the case with every generation of the Congress leaders. It has been the case when they were young, and those people, senior leaders who left in that time, has blamed them as coteries and others. We had seen that word coterie. It is not a new word he has invented. That has been for long. Whomever he has been blamed one of those people in the coterie. There is no coterie at all. We have to understand it. Generations are there is a generational shift happening in the Congress party. Sunil Gavaskar and Kapil Dev has won World Cup for us, but they can't play with Virat Kohli and the team now.
So who's Virat Kohli? So who's Virat Kohli that you're talking about in the Congress party right now?
Virat Kohli is Rahul Gandhi for us.
And this Virat Kohli doesn't win matches.
Virat Kohli has tough times also. He also wins matches in Chhattisgarh and Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh also was matches. This Virat Kohli has only got those selections also.
Shifting focus to debate 2 on News Epicenter, a sensational twist has emerged in the Sonali Phogat murder case after the Goa police in fact revealed that Sonali Phogat was forcefully drugged before she died. CNN News 18 has also accessed CCTV footage showing Sonali Phogat under the influence of a substance at a club in Goa. According to the police, the man in this video who's walking Sonali out is Sudhir Sangwan. He is seen with Sonali along with his friend Sukhwinder Singh. Sonali was then taken to the washroom where she stayed for 2 hours. Sonali died on Tuesday in Goa, and initially it was said that it was a case of heart attack. However, the mystery has deepened after the autopsy report mentioned blunt force injuries all over her body. Many big questions have emerged in connection to her death, and we get you the 5 big mysteries that need to be cracked. Were Sonali's aides ordered to drug her? So who were they acting at the behest of? Who were they taking orders from? What happened in that bathroom for 2 hours when Sonali, soon after that footage that you see on your television screens, which is the CCTV footage where she was seen, 2 men accompanying her, and then they took her to that washroom. How did she receive blunt force trauma? There were those blunt injuries, and why did the Goa police really not read all those that has happened to her and come to the conclusion that it was a case of heart attack? Has Gopal Kanda, who is a member of Legislative Assembly in Haryana, played a role in this incident? Who would have gained from this death? I'll be taking all these questions to the panelists who will be joining me shortly. But first, what happened today?
प्रिलिमिनरी इन्वेस्टिगेशन में दोनों एक्यूज एस्टेब्लिश हो रहे हैं और उनको 302/34 धारा के तहत गिरफ्तार कर लिया गया। और एक वीडियो से जाहिर होता है कि उसको एक सब्सटेंस फोर्सफुली विक्टिम को वन ऑफ द एक्यूज पिला रहा है।
हम तो शुरू से यही कहते आ रहे हैं कि हार्ट अटैक नहीं है, उसकी हत्या की गई है।
On the show is Vikas Chaudhary. He is Sonali Phogat's nephew. He is joining me live. Vikas, परिवार को कब पता चला कि कुछ गलत हुआ है, ये केस ऑफ हार्ट अटैक नहीं है?
का शक हमें उसी दिन हो गया था जब सुधीर सांगवान के साथ सोनाली फोगाट गए थे, क्योंकि एक सोची समझी चाल के तहत सुधीर सांगवान सोनाली फोगाट को गोवा लेके गया था।
सुखविंदर का क्या रोल है?
मैडम, सुखविंदर का रोल तो अब सामने आने से उसने बता दिया है कि मेरे साथ सुखविंदर था। हमें तो ये पता था कि ये सुधीर पीए ही यहाँ से गया है अकेला, सुखविंदर यहाँ से नहीं गया था, यहाँ से सिर्फ सुधीर सांगवान गया था।
गोवा पुलिस ने उन लोग दोनों को अरेस्ट कर लिया है और गोपाल कांडा का भी नाम आ रहा है। उनका क्या रिश्ता था सोनाली फोगाट के साथ? वो उनका क्या है रोल इसमें?
गोपाल कांडा से सोनाली फोगाट का कोई रिश्ता नहीं था। और जो सुखविंदर है, इसका बताया जा रहा है कि कुछ रिश्ता होगा उनसे, गोपाल कांडा से।
ये कहा जा रहा है और गोवा की पुलिस ये कह रही है कि उनके ड्रिंक में कुछ मिलाया गया था, शायद इसी की वजह से उनकी हालत ऐसी हुई। और उसके बाद ब्लंट ऑब्जेक्ट्स भी हैं, तो शायद मौत से पहले उन पे अटैक भी किया गया है। क्या परिवार अभी भी सीबीआई इन्वेस्टिगेशन की मांग करेगी? क्या आपको लगता है ये इन्वेस्टिगेशन सही तरह से जा रहा है?
मैडम, ये सच्चाई पता चल गई है हमें, क्योंकि वहां के प्रशासन ने साफ तौर पर खुलासा कर दिया है कि इसके सुधीर सांगवान ने अपने कबूल कर लिया है, सुधीर सांगवान ने, कि हम इसको मतलब कुछ ना कुछ नशीली पदार्थ पिलाया करते थे।
क्यों पिलाया करते थे?
मैडम, ये कोई मतलब कुछ भी हो सकता है, प्रॉपर्टी का इश्यू भी हो सकता है, क्योंकि इसको पता था कि सोनाली मैडम ये अकेले रहते हैं और इन्हें परिवार वालों से सोनाली मैडम को बिल्कुल अलग कर दिया था सुधीर पीए ने, इसलिए प्रॉपर्टी हड़पने का भी इश्यू हो सकता है इसके अंदर।
क्या परिवार में किसी से उनकी बात नहीं होती थी?
मैडम, हम बात करते थे तो फोन सुधीर सांगवान पीए उठाता था। मुझे शक है कि उसने फोनों को भी हैक किया हुआ था। हम मैसेज करते थे तो मैसेज भी वो सोनाली फोगाट जी को नहीं दिखाता था।
तो कैसे आपको लगा कि सुधीर सांगवान जिम्मेदार है?
मैडम, हम तो शुरू से कह रहे हैं सुधीर सांगवान जिम्मेदार है, क्योंकि इसने सोची समझी चाल के तहत गोवा ले जाया गया और कहा कि वहां पे शूटिंग है, वहां कोई शूटिंग नहीं थी। ये एक प्लानेट मर्डर है बिल्कुल, तो जो सुधीर सांगवान ने ही किया है।
अब सोनाली फोगाट के परिवार में कौन कौन है?
उनके परिवार में सभी हैं, देवर है, सास है, भतीजे हैं, सिस्टर है, सब है मैम। एक बेटी है उनकी 15 साल की।
All right, Vikas, thank you so much for joining us. Let me bring in my guests. Dr. Tanuj Kanchan is Additional Professor, Department of Forensic Medicine. We have Vikram Singh, former DGP of Uttar Pradesh, and Vipin Pabbi, senior journalist. I'm going to begin with you, Vikram Singh. Did the Goa police make some omissions? How did they conclude that it was a case of heart attack when there were marks on the body, blunt force injuries?
A very pertinent question, Marya. I would say that in any such case, the ante-mortem injury is a very telltale sign, and it is indicative of the fact that it is an unnatural death, certainly not a heart attack. And that too not from one injury, but several multiple injuries from a sharp-edged pointed weapon, and having the presence of ante-mortem injuries is an indication that it is certainly cannot be a death due to heart attack. And then the post-mortem report also indicated a very cliche-ridden remark: cause of death could not be ascertained, viscera preserved. Probably it was heart attack. And then I believe the resourceful assassins got this rumor spread that it was due to heart attack, and you had many channels covering the heart attack story. But the fact of the matter is that the CCTV footages were there for any skillful investigator to see the purpose of the visit and also the antecedents of Sudhir Sangwan and Sukhvinder. It was certainly, everything was not natural, everything was not falling into place, and therefore any skill. But now, at least better late than never, Omveer Singh Vishnoi, the IG, has been proactive and has reopened the case, incorporated section 302, section 34, common intention of the IPC, and reopened the cases under the provision of 174 Criminal Procedure Code. And I feel he's on the right track. But my advice would be that the deceased husband also had an unnatural death in 2016. That also needs to be reopened. And if there are common denominators, the dots have to be added.
Okay. And Vipin Papi, why did it take the family to highlight the glaring mistakes in the investigation? I mean, did the Goa police, in concluding that this is a case of cardiac arrest, did they actually not investigate the case till the time the family said that this is a case of unnatural death, that there is much more than what meets the eye?
Marya, yes, certainly. Goa Police Act has been, it's a shame. The kind of evidence that was there, or could see that there could be blunt injuries. Her body had turned blue. So there were several indicators, and yet they played on with that, theory that she had died of a heart attack. So it was great negligence on the part of Goa police. They took so much time and they did not, get to the clues earlier. So this is something very, very, very serious what Goa police has done. It's a clear case of negligence. But at the same time, I must say that Sonali had a very fascinating, although short life. And there are so many mysteries related to that. She started off as a Doordarshan presenter and went on to become a TikTok star and went to the Big Boss and all that. And she really rose from, very levels which were very elementary. But so many things about her life are still under shroud of mystery. For instance, she tweeted a couple of weeks ago that Sherni Khunkar ho gayi hai. So what does that mean? It means something was brewing up. And family coming up now saying that they had suspicion on the PA and all that. Evidently, a lot of things had been brewing up, and the family is also not coming out very clearly. If they thought that there was, something suspicious about the PA, why didn't they raise the red flag earlier? And also Sonali going to Goa and that hotel being booked only for 2 days, while the so-called shooting was on the 3rd or 4th days. I think they're all very mysterious things that are building up here.
Yes.
And it needs
and that footage that we are running on our screens right now of her dancing just before her death, then her drink is spiked. What is the motive behind this murder? And and are there some political connections as well? Dr. Tanuj, come in on this, and purely on the basis of the post-mortem report and how the initial theory, the police concluded that it was a case of heart attack, and only when the family of the deceased spoke about it that they started looking into the larger conspiracy.
Yeah, namaskar everybody. Actually, based on the facts which I know about the findings in the PM report, postmortem report, once, as has rightly been pointed out, once there are some injuries present on the body, then there has to be some suspicion about the death. But as I see what has been out in the media about the cause of death mentioned by the doctor who has conducted autopsy, I think he has preserved all the viscera for analysis. If there is any drug or substance or something added to the drink, that will come out in this thing. Plus, he has mentioned about keeping pathology samples, histopathology of various tissues. So if there is a component of cardiac component behind death, that also would come out. Now, the important here is that in his report, what as per my information goes, he has mentioned about keeping the opinion pending viscera and pathology reports. So this is indicative that grossly on PM examination, he was not able to find out exact cause of death. So I don't know how exactly this cardiac death thing prompted in the media and everywhere. And also he mentions about multiple blunt force injuries or multiple injuries on the body. So I'm not very sure why this thing of cardiac death in this particular case cropped up from where it came out, because as per the autopsy surgeon's report or doctor's report, he is still not clear about the cause of death. And I think he also mentions about the police's role in commenting on the circumstances or manner of death. So
yes, and
that is what I have to
because
say on this.
the police came to the conclusion much before the entire investigation, and that's the reason why the questions are being asked to the Goa police. Were they protecting someone really powerful? Thank you so much for joining us, Vikram Singh, Vipin Pabbi and Dr. Tanuj Kanchan. We are slipping at a short break. After that, there's some good news. In fact, the FIFA has lifted ban on All India Football Federation. I'll get you details when I return. So stay with us.